Good afternoon. This is the last session of a day and a half. So thank you for staying for a day and a half for our session. We are looking forward to a great conversation. I can feel the energy as we come to this session. This is the last panel called Workforce Development, Ecosystems, and Investment. I am delighted to moderate this panel because this work in workforce development is near and dear to my heart. I have a background in this area from a different county, Contra Costa County, where I had the privilege of setting up 2 workforce development type of programs with heavy manufacturing. And it was a labor of love and one that I'll always treasure throughout my life. So it's fun to engage in this conversation with this amazing panel. We are fortunate to have this panel with you from academia, industry, and government to discuss how to transform and nurture a workforce ecosystem so that initiatives like DART and AAM can thrive and contribute to the regional economy of the Central Coast. They will discuss with you the alignment that is essential between industry, academia, and government to develop and nurture a skilled workforce for middle skill, high wage jobs. And the reason I say middle skill, going back to the previous 2 panels, is middle skill jobs are high school plus 2 years. And so that's the in-between, which organizations like Joby can really benefit from. And these kinds of jobs can transform communities and lead to inclusive and equitable economic growth, which is what we are all interested in. So without further ado, the panelists. To my left is Peter Church. He's the Aviation Education Program Manager at Joby Aviation. To his left is Becca Fenwick with Citrus Initiative for Drone Education Research at UC Santa Cruz. We've all been hearing of CIDER, and it's not a drink. She's been sitting at the back table talking to us about CIDER. To her left is Clint Cowden, Dean of Career and Technical Education at Hartnell College. And to the extreme left is Robert Meyer, and he is the Director of Economic Development at California Employment Training Panel for the state of California. Their detailed bios are on the website. So I would like to begin with each of our panel members introducing themselves and discussing the key ingredients and issues to develop and invest in a sustainable and vibrant air mobility and robotics ecosystem. And I'm going to start with Peter Church from Joby.
Hi, thank you, Kiran, and thanks everybody for having me. I'm really excited, and I know that everybody's heard quite a lot about Joby today, so I'm going to skip with a lot of the pleasantries about describing what we are, what we're doing, and kind of focusing on more the object of the discussion today is developing the workforce. And I know it's been kind of a continuing thread through a lot of the discussions, a lot of the panels. But going over our main locations, I know Bonnie mentioned how we're kind of spread all over the globe right now. But the main 3 locations are in Santa Cruz for our corporate headquarters and some of the prototyping and R&D, as well as over the hill in San Carlos for the powertrain production, as well as the battery pack development and electronics. But we are at CSUMB, and we're in the Monterey Bay, and do want to focus more on the location in Marina, where we do have our flight test engineering, but also the certified production and manufacturing plant that there's been so much emphasis on today. And we are running the apprenticeship with the support of Monterey Bay DART and the generous support of the Irvine Foundation. And I really want to focus on those jobs, those middle skill jobs that we're hiring into right now. We have 16 apprentices that are on the floor that are making all of these parts. Here they are listed right now. Those of you who have seen some of the parts that we have out on the table or taken a tour of the facilities will kind of have an understanding of how it fits into the greater picture and how it fits into that aircraft that we see flying around, but also to break it down into all of the components and where people fit into making each of them. And we are, as Bonnie said this morning, hiring hundreds of people over the next several years to make this aircraft. Right now, our team of engineers that's been working on this for the last several years, over a decade, have made an incredible, unique aircraft. And we want to make it not very unique. We want to make hundreds of them and make it replicatable and really scale up how many there are. And these are the roles that are doing it. And right now, we have had the ability to really grab people right off the street with translatable skills that we're able to reskill them into pretty high-tech, advanced aerospace manufacturing roles. Everything from doing the hand lamination of composites, as well as programming and operating the robotic automated fiber placement of Coriolis AFP machines, which is a fancy way of saying that automation with a human touch. We still need people to operate the robots and to interface and do quality assurance. We have our airframe assembly and bonding, and we literally have people coming right from both machine shops doing automotive machining, as well as people that were picking and packing spinach the week before that are now doing high-tech composites bonding and titanium fixture placement on these aircraft. We also have people that are coming from the Air Force and veterans transition centers that have equipment maintenance from aircraft support and diesel and turbine maintenance that are now doing hydraulics and pneumatics maintenance on our robotic assemblies. And like we also mentioned, there's a lot of manufacturing and inventory in the area, and it's a great opportunity for those people that have the skill sets in inventory to interface and join our company. And lastly, quality inspection. There's a lot of quality around here, and there's everything from inspecting cabbage to coming off the Taylor Farms lot to inspecting printmaking and all of the other industries that are supported around here. And we just kind of need to tweak and give them a reskill opportunity to now be inspecting carbon fiber and titanium parts. So I'd say the main focus right here is not necessarily creating a brand new workforce, but seeing the opportunity and the aptitudes that we have within all the local populace that are here that are insanely eager and motivated to learn these new things. Oh, wait.
Thank you, Peter. It's wonderful to know how skills can be transferable and upskilled, and we can transform our environment here. So let's go to Becca, Fenwick, and hear about CIDER.
Hi, thank you. Just want to give you guys a quick tour of what we're doing down or up at UCSC now about the CITRUS Initiative for Drone Education and Research. So CITRUS is a larger organization than just at Santa Cruz. It's based at Berkeley, Davis, Merced, and Santa Cruz, and it's focused basically around tech for social good. So how can we use the skills of technology to address society's problems? And I'm not going to get into it too much because Michael will tell you more about that in the next session. One of the programs is Aviation, is that they're focusing on, and that's where the drones come in. So we're the first aviation program at Santa Cruz, and we're focusing on bringing together diverse students and researchers along with industry partners to try and change the workforce from the very beginning. As people have been talking about for the last day and a half, like drones are really new and we can make a difference from the very beginning. To that end, we've just selected our second cohort of undergraduate students that we're working with on campus, and so we've now had 45 undergraduates who are in or have been through our pilot training program, which I'll talk more about in a second. This is our team who run the program, and so myself, Michael Matkin, who will be talking tomorrow, our faculty director, and Eric, who's in the back and makes sure that we're all doing the right things and keeps us all in line, which is great. A little bit about my background, because I get that question a lot. Yes, I have a weird accent. My parents were crazy, grew up all over the place. But I actually started my career in marine geology and geophysics and sort of looking at geospatial data in that setting, transitioned into landscape conservation and managing environmental IT equipment for the UC Natural Reserve System, and through that got involved in drones and realized there was a need for a workforce training program, for research support, for linking industry and researchers. And so working with Michael and some other folks at Santa Cruz, developed CIDER. So sort of quick tour of how I got here. So really, what is the program about? How does it work? So we have sort of 5 pillars that we work around. So primarily support for underrepresented students, for bringing that diversity aspect into the drone program. We're really focused on education and experiential learning for students. It's a big focus at Santa Cruz. Students would learn better when they actually do things. We also work on commercial contracts, so we can take contracts from either internally the UC, so we work with facilities, we work with researchers, with communications. We can also take contracts from outside the UC, so people need drones as a service, we can do that, and we employ our students through that program. So those students that have their Part 107 license and who've gone through our program or have gone through similar training can be employed as student workers. So when they graduate, they've already had work experience. And we also have a research support. So we work with students, postdocs, grad students, faculty, researchers, if they have questions about how to use drones and what should they have and what sensors do they need and what can they actually do and how do we learn, and the question list goes on and on. We are happy to help, and we will answer all their questions as best we can and work through the problems and get them a good solution. In the education frame, I already mentioned the pilot training program. I'll tell you more about that in a second. We also work with Drone Camp, which Sean Hogan was talking about yesterday. So our partners here at CSUMB, UC Merced, and my brain is, and UCANR. We've been working on Drone Camp for, I think this is the 7th year coming up this summer. And it's a great opportunity for summer Drone Camp. Come spend a week in Monterey, learn about drones. The thing we're really focusing on, the new thing, is the James Irvine Workforce Training Initiative. So thanks to the foundation, they've given us funding to work with our partners here, with Hartnell and Digital Nest and the community members, to build this training program to have these various entry points to the pathway of learning how to use drones for all the things. So mainly we're focused on agriculture, but we're also looking at construction and media as other pathways for sustainable employment. So I mentioned our pilot training program. So this is the one that we are using as the sort of initial model for how we may develop the workforce training program outside of that. So our 2nd year of doing this, we've just selected the cohort, and this year we have 50% women, 33% male, and 17% non-binary. Of those, 50% are Latinx, 25% white, and then Asian and Arab are the racial mix-up for the rest of them. And most importantly, well, equally impressively, I guess, is a mix of majors, of students who are interested in learning about drones and how they could potentially use those drones in their future careers, spanning everything from marine biology to agroecology to robotics, engineering, and sociology. It's a really impressive mix. We're really excited to see where these students go in the future. We also, as I mentioned, support drone research, and here are sort of 3 of the main areas that we're working with at the minute. Ecosystem change, so that can be fires, droughts, all the seasons of California, I think, as they were referred to earlier. And looking at ag tech, so working with our partners at Hartnell and the industry down in the Salinas and area of, like, how do we use the drones? What can they tell us? And how can they improve and help fill that labor market? And then also sensor development. So we have researchers on campus who are looking at how do we make better sensors? How do we have better communications between those sensors, the drones, and the operators? And sort of doing that next step in drone development. I've mentioned a few of our institutional partners around the region, and we couldn't do our work without them, and it's just been such a joy getting to know everybody better and developing these partnerships as we move forward. And not just the educational partnerships, but also the industry partners as well. Like, they provide invaluable support and knowledge, and it's just the wonderful sort of self-feedback loop of talking to them about what they need and what they're going to need in terms of workforce development and knowledge for the skills that people need, bringing that back to the education partners, integrating that into the program, and then iterating that over and over again is just great. And it's a really fascinating process.
Great, thank you, Becca. And let's go to Clint from Hartnell College.
All right, and I really like that everybody's just like my college students. Everybody's in the back. These seats up front, I think, cost the same price. So, anyways, I'm Clint. I'm the Dean of CTE, Workforce Development at Hartnell College, and I'm a recovering college professor, so tell me if I'm talking too long. So I came to this region now 7 years ago, and one of the things that we were doing is really wanted to look at this concept of advanced manufacturing and kind of where does it fit in and how can Hartnell be in this. And for those of you that aren't in the region, Hartnell is a community college. We're a small community college over in Salinas. And for us, when we look at this, we have this perspective that it's a $4.1 billion ag industry in Monterey County, and that's kind of that area where we are obviously kind of idealized and focused on. Now, we talked about the middle wage careers, and so for us, when we look at this employment chart here, the machine operators, those types of things, that $15 to $18 an hour, those are going to be that on-the-job people showing up getting those, and that's really not our segment. The other side of our college, the STEM department, they're focused on creating people to go to universities to become engineers and designing the switches and all of those things. So where my area is really looking at that industrial mechanic, manufacturing, technology, those areas really moving from, and again, these are numbers that low 25%. So the amount of money that a student should kind of anticipate when they graduate from our programs. So starting at that $18 an hour, moving up to that $30 an hour, and how do we create that system for our students? So one of the first things that we did is not ask ourselves. Sometimes in education, we just ask ourselves what we want to do, and we do it. And we wonder why people don't like it. So what we did is we actually went out there, we did something called a DACM, that's education talk, don't worry about it too much. But what we did is we went out to employers and said, give me your person that you wish you could photocopy. Now this is during COVID, so we did this over Zoom. But what we did is we said, give us these great employees, and we're going to talk to them about the actual skills, the actual things that they need to do. And from that backward design, that is how we came up with our educational programs. So when we looked at this, one of the first things that we found out, when you start to talk to employees, they start to say things like, you know what, I wish my boss wasn't the only person that could define how I could grow in this world. And so the first area we started with is what we call in education non-credit. It's free education. So students can come through, go through our non-credit program, and then what we want to do, though, is because what if the student moves and leaves from me, and no one knows about Hartnell? So we want to align with third-party credentialing groups so that that person has mobile certifications. And so we're aligning with NCCER, so that way our students, when they move away, they have these other skills. And that's that first kind of that bottom spectrum. That next step up, and again, this is really focused on a lot of our incumbent workers. How can we take the people that are already here and upskill them? That next level, when we start thinking about our mechatronics program, that's now when we're really starting to kind of look at more of along the lines of what a quote-unquote typical community college would be. Community college, right? 24 to 30-year-olds coming in saying, hey, I'm gonna come to college. And so now we're really focused again on those mechatronic technicians, looking at both, the integration. And that was the other thing that we had to do, is we had to not just listen to our university friends, because university friends sometimes want to say, we're gonna take a class in hydraulics and a different class in pneumatics and a different class and then you get to the real world and it's all integrated. Well, how about we just start teaching it all integrated from day one? So we started doing those processes. So we created that technician program. Then that next segment is, but what about students that do want to transfer on? So we started reaching out to our friends at University of Arizona at Yuma. They were so excited, they said, we'll give you in-state Arizona tuition rates if you will kind of start to build this program. So we're working with them, we're working with Cal Poly SLO, we're working with Fresno State. Fingers are crossed on when CSUMB program is coming. We're excited, hoping that we can have some segment. I know theirs is a little bit more engineering. But we're really excited kind of where our programs are leading us. This is an example of just something, and obviously it's written too small so you can't read it and you can't hold me to anything. But the concept there is that we have been working a longer trajectory with CSUMB on our plant science pathway. And so how can we have students come to college, 2 years of classes at Hartnell College, then transfer seamlessly on? What you'll notice is, yes, there's college classes up there, but in all the fine print, that's the actual secret sauce, right? What other things should you be doing so that you're successful? Because if you just go to college, I can't guarantee success. But there's all these other things, doing an internship, getting that resume, doing those types of things so that those students are moving along that pathway. But we cannot wait for students to come to a community college to learn this stuff. So one of the things we do, we work with the Alisal and Salinas school districts. Over 7,000 students a year. We're going through different programs such as Makerspace, Coder Dojo. We're working with NASA, with our NASA MA program. So making sure that our students at a young age start to see that they're ready for these types of jobs. And then this is another continuum, and I'll go over it real quick, but just the concept of, on the very far side, the right side there, it says registered apprenticeships, and people talk about that. But there's a whole continuum of where we need to have students understand that they need to be aware at the beginning. They need to be able to move through. And so these are the different opportunities that when we work with employers, what's the right thing for them and what's the right thing for our students? That is just for later, so if you guys want to, any hard questions about what we actually teach, Richard Chapman, he's our instructor, but I can answer the other questions, and I went over time, so.
All right. Hey,
Thank you. And now we come to Robert Meyer.
is this on? Yep. All right. Hey, first of all, I just wanted to tell you I'm from Sacramento. Don't hold that against me. I came here with a message that we've sat in a meeting room and basically outlined these issues and come up with a prescribed solution that will supplant your knowledge in networking and communication. Oh, hold on, wrong presentation, sorry. Oh, all right, so we're the employment training panel, and I'm really glad to say that we're a partner with DART in this, and we're simply here to mine for funding opportunities where our funds as a state agency could be used to enhance investment opportunities with employers, to build career pathway partnerships, and most importantly, to create really manageable, identifiable outcomes driven by jobs and career pathways. So, you know, in many of our industry sectors, from ag to advanced technology, many of our partnerships and our educational institutions, we start with a foundation of, we have this common goal. Everyone is looking for workers and skilled workers. And if you comparatively look at other states on a national level, our state is far better off with a more skilled workforce, a more innovative workforce than most places in the country. And as the fourth largest economy, I'm obligated to say that, by the way, fourth largest economy in the world now, you know, we have really a lot to build on, and so I'm really glad to be here. I'm going to go ahead and move that. So just as quickly, what is ETP? We're a state agency. We use a paper performance contract to award funds to offset job skills training costs, primarily with employers, but we leverage the experience of these employers to then provide investment for career pathway opportunities. This includes pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship. This includes K-12 programs where workers are given basic skills enough to be employed, entirely driven by the needs identified by employers. So if you're an employer in this room right now and you're providing input with a workforce development board, any of these fabulous university programs or the community colleges, also fabulous, sorry, and then the economic development corporations, your chambers of commerce, your municipal economic and workforce development resources, if you're engaging those partners and identifying needs that you have for job skills, that's an ecosystem literally driven to serve you. And so I hope you make that, and if nothing else, please continue your engagement and your support. Why our program is effective is we are driven entirely by employer-driven skills needs. That's it. You identify your training needs and tell us how you're training your workers, and we will try and put our contract around both your existing upskill needs as well as the jobs you're going to be creating in the next year to 2 years. With current investment, generous of the Irvine Foundation, we're looking at successor funding opportunities. Our program's been supporting manufacturing for over 40 years now. And so, we have a certain maturity. If you worked with us in the 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s, I'm sorry, when ETP meant everything is a problem. We are now agile, we're online, we have Salesforce, we continually retool our program. If you've worked with us, you've engaged in some of the partnership opportunities that we sort of support, we really are moving the needle forward. At the bottom line, the bottom of it all is we've got $93 million to spend between now and June. So if you were interested in funds, this is a great time to apply. If you were one of these organizations or Workforce Development Board and you've got a model on a local level developed in your backyard, we are looking for the avenues to how to fund it and how to make sure that it's successful, and then how do we build and leverage any other resource to make that last, okay? We have two main models. One, we really work with the employers first. Let's upskill your existing workforce, help you innovate, be more competitive. Then as you're hiring, how do we help you do that? How do we help you recruit locally, build an effective strategy to train and onboard, and then help those people remain and retain in employment with you? The tech sectors, obviously IT, manufacturing, aerospace, space, agriculture, all of these things that we're working in, right? That's target. The next piece is this multiple employer contractor, and that's where the needs of employers are aggregated, and we build career pathway programs, or we build industry-recognized credentials, the ones that were just outlined here. Clint, I can't wait to begin to work with, because we can provide funding to offset the cost of that training. And all that does is benefit the employers that participate in it. So we're mining. I've had several great conversations today, and by the way, I hope Liam was able to find coding support, because he's now had to leave to go take some instruction. I got a coding exam, right? I think he had to leave for a coding exam. I was talking to him. He built drones and took them to Ukraine. I don't know, something pretty cool. He's a student. Our key initiatives and why this is really important to us, we're really supporting job creation, like sustainable job creation investments for companies. How do they hire? How do they recruit? How do they retain them? We work really closely with GoBiz. They're back there, Brian and Dan. If you've not talked to them, please do. I think they do something very emblematic with the state resources, and that is disperse the expertise. We no longer want to be based entirely out of Sacramento, and what we instead do is put very knowledgeable and capable professionals in a community so that they can be more effectively engaged and building more long-lasting, successful engagement opportunities and partnerships. So I have a person, Renee Pierce, and she's out of the Bay Area, and she's phenomenal. She's actually toured Joby and has just come back and just been like, we got to work with this company. So very excited to do that work. I'd say most importantly, the range of industry sectors. The Department of Defense, I think I've heard mentioned a couple times, is so keenly interested in this industry sector now and this technology and how deployable it is. Obviously, world conflict and stuff has really brought this into the purview, but there's tremendous amounts of federal and state investment that can be leveraged from them, Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, and Department of Education, and of course the Department of Labor, which houses a lot of the programs we directly engage with. So I'm hoping that we can really build some long-lasting engagement. We do a lot of apprenticeship training. A program called Respond, we have a fantastic company that we work with called Digital Path that builds drones that is working for CAL FIRE. And they're like doing a lot of work helping restore communications and broadband, digital broadband in rural communities that have been adversely impacted by fire. We're working a lot also with that initiative with wood products, with water efficiency in agriculture, as well as manufacturing. So in all of these areas, it's just really about the companies that are driving the innovation, and as an agency, how can we best partner with the organization itself. The slide deck has a lot more information that's available online, and please do that. So thank you so much for the time.
Great. Thank you. So We are going to now begin a conversation after these introductory comments. From your perspective, if you think of questions, please put them on Slido, and we will ask them as we get an opportunity. So the first question to the panel: a robust talent pool aligned with the needs of advanced air mobility, automation, and robotics industry is essential for the success of the companies in this region. What kinds of academic and training programs, pathways, and partnerships between academia, government, and industry will be required for industry and regional success? So that's the 3 Ps for success: programs, pathways, and partnerships. Let's begin with Becca.
That's a really big question. I think that we're working on it, I think is the most important thing. You know, I think recognizing the need, identifying what skills are going to be needed, and then how those people can be trained is what we're all trying to do. I think that it's just going to be really interesting from my perspective on how all the different pieces fit together. So recognizing that people are going to be coming into this workforce from different skill levels, from different knowledge points, and that we have a wonderful ecosystem of partners who meet them at those different points, right? So the target and the curriculum that you develop for working with Digital Nest people, the students there, is going to be different than at Hartnell. It's going to be different than at CSUMB or at Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz. And so developing that network of how do we identify the students and get them into the right positions, get them into the right programs, and then move them through those programs as they want to, and connecting them up directly with the industry. Like, that network of connections and ladder of engagement is being developed, I think, pretty well around here.
Thank you. And you're doing that in Citrus with all your multiple pathways already.
Yeah.
Clint, anything to add to that?
Well, and I think what it is we've got to change the 1950s model of education, right? And so one of the things is a person may come and get their bachelor's, but then they may come back to a community college. And it's working with industry, asking those specific skills. The flip side also of it is working with industry and giving college credit for the skills that people are learning in industry, so that we can continue these concepts of apprenticeships and these types of things. So kind of reevaluating and re-looking. And it's okay to take a student and hand them to a friend, and knowing that they're going to learn great things there.
Robert?
The only thing I would really focus on is the word ecosystem. You know, it does take sort of a network of these programs, and some elements can be solved with a few partners, and some can be solved with a great many and maybe replicated from other areas. And I think it is part of an ecosystem. It's important to recognize that each of us individually, particularly the employers, are networks upon themselves. Not only do you have layers of management and workers, but you have, you know, pathways where people heard about the company, and where other areas that the company is located, that they've done certain types of investments in workforce and seen them be successful, and then they can bring that to particularly like the area like the Monterey Peninsula. I think the strongest aspect will always be sort of the networking of the educational institutions, particularly the community colleges, which have very agile and deployable curriculums driven by the industry sector, and that's on the contract ed side, which has been phenomenal. And I'll just end with that. We have $13 million in available funds already with the community colleges. You could sign up tomorrow. So.
And from your perspective as the employer, as an industry person, any comments on the partnerships that you have with education?
Yes, absolutely. And like Becca said, is seeing where everything fits and identifying the commonalities between all of the industries. You know, we've heard a lot about Joby the last 2 days, but identifying what it means to be a drone operator and what different perspective somebody with that training could bring to our company, as well as somebody that was trained as one of our composite technicians could then transfer to, you know, a drone operation in agricultural technology, and what that might just bring to the entire ecosystem, like Robert said. And there's been a lot of talk about multimodal transportation, but I like to think of it as multimodal education as well, and having the different institutions talking to each other. I've heard so many engineers tell me that, well, the best engineers come from great technicians, because people that know how to make something can design something that is there better. And if we have a very singular pipeline identified for how to train and educate people, then they'll start to think, well, I have to go this route or this route, and this is the only outcome. If we have people that start in an apprenticeship, which is an age-old mode of teaching people, and then give the off-ramps and then the on-ramps along that pathway to come in and out of industry, education, academia, then that's the way forward.
Excellent. So staying on the topic of partnerships, Clint, are there some, and I think the answer is yes, some models that you can talk about where you've got some best practices that have worked for you that you can share with us?
Yeah, and so we're going to touch on a couple of them, and one of them I haven't discussed yet, and that's our CSN3 program. So you can come to Hartnell, spend a year and a half at Hartnell, then a year and a half at CSUMB, and you can get a bachelor's in computer science. And that's amazing. For that student that knows and they're accelerated, woo, that's awesome. That was not me when I was 18. And so there's these other approaches. And for those guys that are sports fans or whatever, it would be crazy to practice for 4 years and then go play games and never practice again. But our education system's kind of built around that concept, right? So this concept of really integrating and working with our employers and going in and communicating with them and saying, you know what, it's go work a while, come back and get some training. Go work a while, come back and get some training. And so I think, again, for those of us that are in education, understanding that a lot of us are focused on that credit thing. But as we talked about, there's contract education. There's non-credit, there's credit. There's all these opportunities if we sit down and really listen to our local employers and then listen to our students. We have the ability to find these solutions, but we got to sit down and really work with our partners.
And I'd like to pursue this a little further from the negative side. So what are some hurdles and challenges in developing the partnership? So you've talked about one with CSUMB that worked. But maybe, Becca, you can talk about some hurdles and challenges in developing and how do we overcome them?
That's a really good question. I think that a lot of the challenges and hurdles that I see are just sort of communication and time. And it takes a long time to build like a good, solid partnership. You know, a lot of the conversations that we've been having, we've been working on for a year and a half, 2 years, decades. And, you know, it's that commitment and that time that we need to put in to create those partnerships to make this successful.
To build a common culture, because
Exactly,
you're coming from
yeah.
different perspectives.
Yeah, exactly. And also geographically, too. So, you know, there's historically, every time I come back, come down to this end of the county, they're like, oh, UC Santa Cruz, they're up north. They don't come down here. You know, like, there's that history, right? And so there are cultural expectations in history that you have to overcome as well in this process. But again, you do that by showing up.
Peter, from your perspective, hurdles as an employer, as the industry person, what are the hurdles and difficulties you're noticing in partnering with education?
Like a lot of people have already touched on, is the expectations of having a pretty rigid structure, and thinking like, okay, well, and I like how Clint said, we went to a bunch of different employers and said, what would you like to see? And we'll train to those skill sets. We don't necessarily need to hire somebody that knows exactly how to do all of our processes, because we're pretty unique in the processes that we use, much like all of the other employers are in the area. So to just kind of have programs that identify aptitude and skill sets in the students and tell them what they can do with that, and give them the ability to learn and the skill set of how to learn, so that when they show up to an industry job, they pick up the training that much quicker and learn that process.
And Robert, what have you noticed from the ETP side in terms of these partnerships?
I think probably the one thing that I would hit on, just to add in this conversation, would be the fact that as we move into the equity space in terms of employee recruitment, in terms of widening the net for new workers. We're obviously sort of adjusting the education pathways to create pathways for people that otherwise have not been told that they belong in terms of an educational sense. So as they get trained up for workers, I think that one thing that really has to be there is to recognize that employers and their desire to influence culture, I was very impressed with what Joby was talking about in terms of their cultural values, has to be sort of coupled with an awareness of how to properly engage. And this means trust building with the CBOs that serve the communities that have been disenfranchised or traditionally underserved, in a way that continues to build on trust. We're not going to solve or establish a relationship or a partnership with simple investments, as generous as they might be, but instead it's going to be, showing up, it's going to be following up, it's going to be engaging in a really sincere and profound way to just build trust first. And then that's going to, I believe, with the intention, facilitate better recruitment patterns and more importantly, better retention within workforce for those employers wanting to do that.
Good point. Trust is essential, especially to bridge across the different cultures. So let's talk a little bit about funding. And Robert, what kinds of funding models and private-public business models do you see most likely to succeed and sustain a successful workforce and talent development ecosystem?
Well, I think that the public-private partnerships, driven both, more and more philanthropy is being accessed to seed programs, and then more systemic types of state and federal investment are driving. I think in the workforce side, the workforce development boards, workforce accelerator funds and grant funds where they can be specifically applied are very, very interesting. Investments in apprenticeship and training that leads in that apprenticeship pathway. I firmly believe that access to the community colleges and funding there, where that's directly tied to recognized credentials and certificates, those are the translatable skills. And whenever an employer stands there and says, hey, I want training or support like that, a program like ours, other investments through GoBiz or support for capital investment, those can all be very, very valuable and win accessed. So I think it just sort of should be an ongoing conversation, but I hope that something that's replicable, broadens sort of the base of the programs, and maybe Clint could talk about that. The KSA is needed, but that's where I would start.
Becca, anything to add from your perspective from Citrus and working with the Irvine Foundation? What has been your perspective on public-private partnerships, and how has that benefited you in your work?
Well, I mean, we wouldn't be doing it without those partnerships. Like, fundamentally, the public-private partnerships of the philanthropy and, also federal funds from grants and things like that, that's what support our program. And so they're absolutely essential and really appreciate it.
And give you flexibility and
Yeah, absolutely.
nimbleness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Clint, I think the same for you, right?
Yeah, and I think the ability to have multiple funding streams allows you to be nimble. So, for us, a National Science Foundation grant allowed us kind of to get to the point where we could get the Irvine funds, which then led to Bank of America funds, which then, leads to these other things, and you're able to braid those funds, and it's so much stronger and more robust than trying to do it all with one single grant.
I think the other thing I would say about bringing in multiple sources of funding is that you're bringing in multiple partners.
Yeah.
And so you can then have a really wonderful network of different people bringing different aspects to the program, whether it's, from this grant you can get research equipment, from this one you're bringing in experts in this field. Like, they all come together, and it's a really productive environment.
Great. I'm going to take us to our last question before I look at the audience questions, which is this corridor that we are developing in DART and AAM provides us an amazing opportunity. It's a transformational opportunity to build a skilled, inclusive, and equitable workforce. So what do you see as the major strategies and pathways to achieve this goal of equity and inclusiveness? And let's start with Peter.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's been touched on so many times over the last few days, and even right now, of just building trust. As a publicly traded company, we have obligation to shareholders, and we can get a little single tunnel vision on where we need to go, but the partnerships really allow us to integrate with the community and to build that trust, and that we're here and we're invested in the community and the people. And strategically, I think the way to do that is through the partnerships, through the community-based organizations, meeting with groups like Mujeres en Acción, Digital Nest, and having the intentionality that a lot of the partnerships have afforded us to not, to take those blinders off and say, okay, well, we don't just need to make parts, we need to figure out who's making the parts and where are we going to get those people from. And then having the buy-in and the validation of the community leaders to say, we think that this is a good fit for this person, and then we can trust that opinion in taking them on and giving the training that they're going to be a good fit and improve the culture that we're trying to foster in the industry, and then with education as well.
Thank you. Robert?
I would actually just say you could build a lot around an employer like Joby and what you're saying, Peter. I'm very impressed in a regional sense of the partners that have been gathered. My only input and add is going to be not right now, but 6 months from now when we have programs on the ground and funding deployed, and then the quarterly meetings and the sort of the gritty hard part. So it's nice to be here in a meeting and just vaguely present on our program and our goals. Please, if you've given me your contact information, hold me to it. We are here for that partnership in the long term. So, that's the thing to lean into, I think.
And in the work that you're doing both at Hartnell and at UC, you have students from all backgrounds, and you're reaching out to students of all backgrounds, and you're changing your immediate environment. So any comments on building a transformed workforce?
I'm really excited about it. I'm so excited about the new cohort that we've just selected, and the one that we had last year as well. I was going through the applications, and we hadn't actually consciously selected for meeting the diversity standards. We're just looking for diverse students. And then I was sitting in the back, actually yesterday, running through the numbers and calculating the percentages of women versus men, and I was like, wait a minute. This entire cohort, it's 50% women. That never happens.
I noticed that, yes.
Which I'm just super, super excited about. It's going to be really, really fun. And then just the diversity of the interests of the students is going to be outstanding.
And then, great companies like this have the ability to say HR is hard. HR is hard, right? Just saying I want a 4.2 GPA and they have to have that, that's okay, whatever. But being able to say, you can come to my community college. I've got mothers that wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, work in the field, come back, get their kids ready for school. Their GPA isn't a 4.0. They're not doing some of those things, but you know what they have? They have a ton of work ethic, a ton of grit, a ton of those things that companies want to look for. And so setting down and working with our HR departments to understand that people bring this amazing stuff to work, and come and talk to them.
Incidentally, that training for HR departments could be funded by ETP.
Well said. Well, as we are coming close to the end of our time together, I don't know if there are any questions on Slido. I don't see anything. Josh, are we?
Slider there. Let's see. Are there any Slidos? Oh, no, you gotta go. We got a bunch of stuff here. Sorry. There was the Slido. I saw it. I saw the Slido.
Okay, let's see if we can ask.
1 or 2.
Exactly. Robert, let's take the first one. Does ETP reimburse programs that train farm workers UN regenerative, AG, agricultural tech equipment and process that include AAM monitoring?
Yes. So if the employer is defining that as a job skill need in any tangible way, we can offset the costs. The key would be finding an appropriate model. So if, let's say, they were at Hartnell or they wanted to partner with Hartnell, we could offset the cost for that ag company, of course. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that quick answer. And the second one, for Clint, let me take that one. How do you know the curriculum you've designed is aligned with a good paying job in this region?
In education, we test things on humans. So we start off, and we think we have a good idea, and then we put humans through education, and then if they get employed, we know we're doing pretty good. If we don't, we have to adjust, and we're constantly doing that. We don't normally say that out loud, but I'm trying to be quick.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for those questions. And panel, thank you very, very much. I think we have a great future ahead of us, given the wonderful work going on here and all the partnerships we've developed. Thank you so much.